All right, welcome to the video, everyone. This is going to be part one of a multi-part mini video series where I'm going to be doing a commentary over this work footage, talking about the job, and also some other things related to tree work and business. So, first and foremost, what you're seeing me do here in this video is pruning this large hemlock tree to remove some of the lower hanging branches that are going out towards the street over the fence. I was working solo, so basically what I did is I started on the outer side of the fence, trimmed off as far back as I could up to the fence with the pole saw, then climbed to cut the rest of the branches at the trunk with the chainsaw, and I did some solo rigging so that way I could untie the pieces up in the tree and then just toss them over the fence to the truck. Now let's talk about the situation with this job. The year before what you're seeing here in the video, I had quoted a lot of work on this property. We pruned multiple trees, including this hemlock. It's actually almost like two hemlock trees. It's got two large stems growing out of the stump, so it is technically one tree, but it's almost like two. And this was included in that quote. Now, at the time, vines that were entangled with the branches in the tree had growth on them. I think it was like around the end of summer, beginning of fall, that I quoted the project. So I made this suggestion that we reassess the vines later on, like in the winter, when there was no growth on them, because it would be a lot easier to remove them from the tree. What the pruning description was for this tree was to just remove some of the lower hanging branches and dead wood to kind of open things up a little bit, make it look a little bit cleaner. And when I initially met with the customer and talked about this tree and the vines, I was kind of leading under the assumption that when we came back to reassess, we would be quoting the removal of the vines. So actually climbing and cutting and disentangling all the vines from the branches and the trunk of the tree. So basically what we were talking about is two separate projects. So I quoted what we would be doing at the time. And like I said, there was additional work included. It wasn't just this hemlock. So we did the work, and then earlier this year, customer got in touch with me, ready to proceed forward with the rest of the hemlock. So I went out, I looked at it, and I wrote up a quote to cut and remove all the vines. I actually made a video talking about how to quote projects that may not be so straightforward, where you may not really be able to tell exactly how long it would take, how involved it would be. Go check that out afterwards if you haven't seen it already, if you're interested. That video was inspired by this particular job, and I explained how I quoted it. But anyways, so I provided a quote to cut and remove all the vines, and I heard back from the client, and they were a little surprised that I was charging extra because they thought that it was included in the initial quote from the year before. And we had a few back and forths via text and email, and finally I said, okay, I need to go out there, meet with him in person, and take a look at this tree again. We need to figure out exactly what I'm thinking and what the client's thinking, because that, seeing it in person and being right there with the client is the best way to make sure that you're both in agreement about something. So I went out there, and I actually brought the pole from my 25-foot pole saw to use as a pointer so I could point to specific things. And turns out I was misunderstanding what the client was looking for. I was under the assumption that we were going to be climbing and removing all the vines. But all he was looking for was to just remove a few of the lower branches that were growing out over the fence and just snip any of the vines up to that point. So anything that was, at the point where we cut the branches and below, just clean up that stuff. Leave everything else up in the tree. That changes things considerably because that is a lot less time and a lot less labor than removing vines from the entire tree.